Tonight, lawmakers in Albany are probably saying TGIF. Thank God it's finished. That's because corruption charges have been flying around all week and accusations are rampant. We'll get into it with our panel. Then Westchester County Executive Rob Astorino tells me how he's dealing with soaring pension costs and also trying to attract jobs to Westchester by competing with the Big Apple. And my sit down with comedian Howie Mandel. This conversation won't leave you laughing. It'll have you thinking about your health. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman in for Richard French tonight. And we start in Albany, where there is lots of new information about lots of lawmakers under that continuing cloud of corruption. Former Speaker Sheldon Silver is now facing a new corruption charge. And the guy who replaced him, Carl Heastie, is now under fire for profiting from a house his mother bought with embezzled money. On this program, we've explained how Heastie was supposed to sell the house and use the money to reimburse victims of his mother's crime, but instead kept the house for several years before selling it at a tidy $200,000 profit. And let's not forget about Senate Majority Leader Dean Skelos and his son Adam. They are the subject of a federal corruption investigation, and today we're learning more about what the government is probing and how a company that Adam Skelos worked for got a contract from Nassau County even though it wasn't the lowest bidder. His father just happens to represent the island and is the most powerful Republican in Albany. Let's get to our panel for analysis. Ed Cox is here. He is the chairman of the New York State Republican Committee. Thank you for being with us. Dominic Carter is here as always, political journalist and author. Thank you as well, Dominic.
Thank you, sir.
And Noam Bramson is here. He is the Democratic mayor of New Rochelle and was the 2013 Democratic nominee for Westchester County Executive. And first of all, we've talked a lot about the latest revelations about Albany corruption in the last few days and weeks. It is not so far to assume that Carl Heastie could wind up under an investigation similar to his predecessor, Sheldon Silver. And we've also heard about Dean Skelos. Let's say the same thing happens to them that happens to Shelley Silver, which is not too much of a stretch, indicted and arrested. Do they have to do the Silver? Do they have to step down immediately?
I question whether it's a stretch time. We're talking about news stories. We're not talking about any of the real background that you need to be sure there's going to be an indictment.
Though this is the same way that the Silver story started. Some leaks in the newspaper and an investigation was underway.
I understand,
but
he,
if we
he
get
had
there,
a lot of known problems already.
If we get there, do Heastie and Skelos have to step down the way?
No,
that
I don't
Silver
think
did?
so. I
Really?
don't think it's necessary. If they're, I mean, it depends upon the indictment and the way it's done. I mean, the U.S. Attorney is under very heavy fire from district court judges for the way he has announces indictments and the way he's trying some of these indictments in the press.
No, if they're indicted, they're arrested, they have to go?
Look, I think Ed's caution is well placed, and we have to be careful not to get ahead of ourselves. They are just news stories, and this is all going to play out. But what is clear is that events like this and news like this simply adds to the cloud of discomfort and disgust that many people have with Albany. And it's evident that the corruption challenges are not episodic, they're systemic. And until we have a culture that inspires a greater degree of confidence among the people of New York State, I think it's going to be difficult for Albany to govern in the way that we expect and want it to.
Dom, they don't want to play the speculation game. What about you? You want to take the bait here? Do they have to go if they wind up the same way that Shelley Silver
Well,
did?
the majority leader, his conference has already indicated they're standing behind him. And what they have said is basically what I questioned earlier in the week. Simply because the New York Times is reporting something does not make it a fact. It is only an allegation at this point. There is no indictment, nothing has come down. So if an indictment happens to come down against the Senate Majority Leader, it will trouble things and complicate things, but at least the budget process is already done. The conference has indicated they're going to stay behind him. And as for Mr. Heastie, I have to agree with the mayor here. All of this is just simply, Andrew, it's going to play itself out. And at that point, you know, the public will make a decision.
Bill Rushbaum, who is the reporter for the New York Times, has very close relations with the Southern District. And the Southern District is basically saying, we don't have anything on Skelos. Come one, come all, come in. That's why they went out and they're talking about a grand jury and subpoenas, but they don't have anything yet, and they are looking for information. So there's nothing there yet, from the way I interpret the way the story came out.
Fair enough. All right, let's talk about the larger systemic issues within Albany. And Noam, I'm curious, you're the mayor of the 7th largest city in New York. You need Albany. You need to go to the legislature from time to time and say these are the needs of the city. How does that system, does the what appears to be a lot of corruption running around. Does that change your relationship with Albany? Does it change the way you ask for things? Does it change the way business gets done?
Well, I suppose if I lived in Shelley Silver's district or Dean Scalos's district, then it may very well change the way we relate to Albany. But we're fortunate in Westchester that we have a delegation that is competent and has integrity and has not encountered any of these problems. And so we work primarily through them, and it hasn't impacted our relationship at all, which has been a positive one and a mutually supportive one. And that's also a lesson in not painting with too broad a brush, because you can have an institution with big problems, and yet there can be many members within it who in fact are dedicated and are conducting themselves in a way that should make all of us proud. So it's been fine for us in Westchester, but if the institution as a whole is unable to do its business, then of course everyone in New York State suffers, and fortunately that hasn't occurred yet. But if these problems continue to snowball, then who knows what comes down the pipe.
Mr. Chairman, I'm giving you one wish for Albany, that you could snap your fingers and make one change in Albany to reduce the amount of corruption that we see from our state legislature.
Term limits.
You think that alone would do it?
I think that would be a tremendous advance in this whole thing. People would not expect to continue there, would not get so embedded there, you would have a turnover there. I think it would be very beneficial.
People wouldn't try to just cash in while they can under a more limited amount of time?
Well, look, the other thing is to break the connection between nonprofits and Albany. It's a lot of money sloshed in the nonprofits and then comes out again to benefit the political people involved. And I would try and break that nexus also.
Mr. Mayor, I give you one rule that you can pass that changes Albany.
Elect some better people.
That's okay, but
No,
that's up to
listen,
voters. That's not.
You know something, that's my dispute with term limits. I believe in democracy. You select the person who you think is best to represent you, regardless of how long they've served or how little they've served. And ultimately, it's up to voters to make a judgment about whether they find this cast of characters to be acceptable or not. And until there's a critical mass of disgust, people are going to continue to skirt the edge of what is appropriate ethical behavior. And it's really up to us as citizens to say enough is enough.
Dom, what's your silver bullet?
Full disclosure on outside income, definitely cutting the ties with nonprofits. That's one of the ways that a lot of scandals go down. You're able to funnel money to a nonprofit, have a family member take it on the backside, take it out on the backside, or rent from one of your buddies with the nonprofits. Quality of people, I would agree. It was something else that you said, Mr. Chair, that really caught my eye, and I'm trying to remember.
Term limits here?
Term limits. It was something else. But I mean, I can respect the argument, and I will say this, Andrew. When you look at term limits in New York City, as it relates to the city council, there's still corruption as it relates to money that comes in for the campaigns, but it's not as much as we've seen in years past. So maybe.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Up next, pension costs are soaring and causing problems everywhere from Detroit to New Jersey. Even Westchester County is feeling the pinch. County Executive Rob Astorino tells me how he's handling that and whether taxpayers will feel the pinch as well.